You're watching Access Minnesota. Here's Jim Dubois.
In 1957, President Dwight Eisenhower sent federal troops to Little Rock, Arkansas to enforce the desegregation of the city's schools. During the 1960s and 70s, school integration plans were launched in many cities throughout the country. But a growing number of parents and educators fear that many of the hard-fought battles to desegregate schools may have been in vain. A recent study found that Minnesota schools are more segregated today than they were in 1968. Access Minnesota's A.J. Holler reports on the efforts by some parents in the Twin Cities to bring racial diversity to the schools that their children attend.
With the state's public schools more segregated than ever, parents and policy experts are trying to diversify Minnesota's classrooms. Two schools in the Twin Cities that are on the forefront of educational integration are the Fine Arts Interdisciplinary Resource Schools, FAIR schools, located in downtown Minneapolis and Crystal. Parent Keith R. Lynch sees integration as a staple of a good education.
Integration to me means kids being able to be in an environment where they're able to experience different people's cultures, learn from one another, learn from their different experiences, and be able to share those experiences to kind of further their education.
Parent Kyle Samjima has children attending Fair School because she sees the consequences of segregation.
We're all hurt by children who learn intolerance. We're all hurt by children who don't learn about the acceptance of other cultures. We're all hurt when a student's educational experience is inferior. And that is a tendency in segregated schools. They do, with the higher poverty schools tend to have higher teacher turnover. I mean, there are just tons of, just so many detrimental effects. That's not to say that there aren't segregated schools that have fantastic teachers and incredible students and parents, but generally, when you look at, the bottom line of what's in a school and the quality, and that hurts everyone. I want all the children who graduate from high school to have had an amazing experience in school, not just mine.
Mona Langston is a housing policy advocate who believes segregation today is the product of historic housing patterns.
Housing patterns are a huge contributor to segregated schools. We started to segregate housing right around the same time that we were trying to integrate public school systems. So all the efforts that were made in integrating public schools by voluntary choice of integration in the north and by forced integration in the south were eliminated or eradicated or reversed by affordable housing patterns, where you'd see, like, for example, in Chicago, mostly the affordable housing being built in one area and one region of the city, and thereby segregating poor folks into one neighborhood. And in Minnesota, the housing patterns are pretty similar. You see overconcentration of affordable housing in one particular area. We have still some really old housing projects in our city that are 100% affordable, but the new housing that's being built is mixed income housing, which is a much more healthy approach to community integration.
Globalization has made the world a lot smaller, and some say integration in the classroom can help prepare children for the future.
Because we live in a world that is not just one color or one faction of anything. So basically, you need to be in a school system where you're able to experience different people, because when you get in the real world, that's how things really are.
For Access Minnesota, I'm A.J. Holler.
Concerns are growing over the long-term effects of head injuries suffered by football players. Recently, the National Football League announced new guidelines for treating players who are diagnosed with concussions. Just how hard are those hits on the field? Access Minnesota's Justin Ware tells us about a University of Minnesota physics professor's efforts to answer that question.
Weber rolling out, and he's going to throw deep for Decker. What a grab! Touchdown, Minnesota!
Looks like that hit on Golden Gopher wide receiver Eric Decker didn't feel too good.
Decker shaken up as he got hammered.
The blast from Cal safety Sean Cattouse had enough force to cut Decker's jaw open. And while Decker clearly was uncomfortable after the hit, the Gopher athletic staff was able to stitch him up so he could head back into the game. which is amazing considering the force his body withstood.
Just to hold on to that ball is a testament to the hand strength of Eric Decker.
But hold on a minute. Just how much force did Decker endure?
How hard was that hit? How many G's did Decker experience during that hit?
To find that answer, we took University of Minnesota physics professor Dan Dahlberg out to the TCF Bank Stadium field to break down the science behind Decker's amazing touchdown catch.
Knowing the time and the distance where he landed, I can now calculate what that velocity was.
To find those numbers, Dahlberg first had to study some film. Using the game footage, he was able to break down the play in several different ways, coming up with estimated speeds of Decker, Cattouse, the impact, and the time it took for both players to land. Next comes the math.
And so that acceleration that he was experiencing was 345 feet per second squared.
Knowing factors like Decker's speed in the 40-yard dash and the time it took for him to travel between the 10 and 5-yard lines, which was determined by watching the video, Dahlberg was able to come up with an equation that allowed him to estimate the amount of G-force exerted on Decker's body during the brief impact. And the key to doing that was determining the distance between where Decker was hit to where he landed on the ground.
So in terms of G's, I'm going to take this 345 feet per second squared and divide that by the acceleration due to gravity, which is 32 feet per second squared. And when we do this, we find that his acceleration was 10.7 G's.
To be precise, Dahlberg said Decker felt 10.78 G's of force during the hit. Now that 345 feet per second squared divided by 32 feet per second squared, which is the force of 1 G, gravity, and that's how you get 10.78. 10.78 G's of force that Decker suddenly felt during that hit.
Now, that's a pretty big number. I found one report online where Navy carrier pilots undergo acceleration of about 3 G's when they're taking off from the catapult assist on the flight. In car wrecks, it looks like you could have as much as 40 G's. To give you some idea, this 10.7 G's meant if Decker weighs, say, 200 pounds, right at that point during that collision, he's weighing more than a ton.
Standing on the field with no other forces factored in, Eric Decker weighs 220 pounds. For a brief moment during the impact, Decker had 10.78 G's thrusting him. 10.78 times 220 is more than 2,300, which means for that brief impact, Decker felt like he weighed 2,300 pounds. That's more than 3.5 times the force Navy pilots feel when they're being catapulted off an aircraft carrier's deck. And yeah.
Following review, the ruling on the field, the touchdown has been confirmed.
Decker held on for the touchdown.
Professor Dahlberg is a member of the University Physics Department's Physics Force, a team of U faculty and high school science teachers who demonstrate principles of physics to the public. To learn where you can see the Physics Force in action, visit physics.umn.edu. That's all for this month's edition of Access Minnesota. Coming up next month, a look at smart grid technology and how it could make our electrical supply more reliable and energy efficient. Also, retiring University of Minnesota Alumni Association CEO Margaret Carlson joins us to talk about her quarter century of service to the U. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Access Minnesota. Issues that matter to you. Join us again next week as we bring you the newsmakers and stories that shape our everyday lives. Access Minnesota is produced by the Minnesota Broadcasters Association in cooperation with the University of Minnesota's College of Liberal Arts.